Coco Gauff weighs in on Unjust. Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek criticism. Coco Gauff has responded after the Dubai Tennis Championships tournament director called for ranking point penalties following Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek's withdrawals from the WTA 1000 event. Coco Gauff has weighed in after the tournament director of the Dubai Tennis Championships advocated for some of her biggest rivals to lose their ranking points for withdrawing from the event at the last minute. World numbers 1 and 2. Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek both pulled out before the WTA 1000 event, with Sabalenka citing a hip injury, whilst Swiatek, who exited last week's Doha quarterfinals, sought a schedule adjustment. Swiatek has subsequently argued that elite players should face stricter penalties for withdrawing from tournaments immediately before they begin, asserting that fines weren't an adequate deterrent. The Dubai tournament director described the reasons for their withdrawals as a bit strange and questioned whether Sabalenka's injury was serious enough that NASCAR star strips down to underwear after parading young son at Daytona 500. Olympic curler rages at reporter after swearing and cheating scandal. He told The National, "I don't know. I think there should be a harsher punishment on the players for withdrawing, not just fines. They should be docked ranking points. I even asked the tournament doctor, what is the injury? He said it's a minor injury, not one that would force her to withdraw from the tournament. And for Iga, I asked, isn't this a strange decision? I think a fine will not do anything. I feel they should deduct points from the players. A monetary fine won't help. Many years ago, Serena Williams withdrew and was fined $100,000. But what is $100,000? She would play someplace else and make $1 million. So the fine isn't a big deal." Talik plans to bring up these issues at a meeting in Rome later this year. However, world number 4 Gauff, who is competing at this week's WTA 1000 in Dubai, feels that the tournament director's views are overly severe and unjust. I mean, for me, I don't think I've ever really pulled out of a 1000 that I can remember off the top of my head. Yeah, I definitely don't think players do it, like they just don't want to play. I don't think it's that decision. You look at, like, burnout throughout the year. Although maybe it might not affect you now, it will affect you later, the two-time major winner explained. I feel like, for me, this part of the season I have always struggled. I think just because of the transition and things like that. Do I think players should be docked points? Not really. We already have the mandatory. We get zeros on our ranking for everything. For this point in the schedule, I think it's hard to play all the tournaments now that they're 2 weeks. I think the ask of players are becoming more and more and more. I do understand the tournament side. They obviously want the players there. In the past, I think top players have always come to Doha and Dubai. This draw has historically been a tough draw. I understand it's unfortunate this year. I don't think it's fair for players to get docked points. I think, if anything, we should have an optional 1000 like the men do with Monte Carlo. Yeah, I think that's a little bit harsh in my opinion. The grueling tennis schedule and the number of mandatory 1,500-point events on the women's tour have been a significant discussion point in recent years, with some players confessing they must forego tournaments and incur penalties to ensure sufficient time for rest and game improvement. Tennis, triumph, and the weight of words. Tennis is more than just a sport. It's a theater of drama, emotion, resilience, and, often just as fiercely, public opinion. When players like Gauff, Sabalenka, and Swiatek step onto the court, they bring not only rackets and footwork but enormous personal histories, aspirations, and pressures. In the modern era, every gesture, every word post-match, every social media comment becomes a headline, a soundbite, and sometimes a misinterpreted story. Recently, the tennis world has been polarized by talk around Sabalenka and Swiatek, not for crimes on the court, but for how they've exited tournaments or expressed themselves, prompting varying degrees of criticism from commentators and fans alike. Into this fray stepped Coco Gauff, whose response resonates not only as a voice of her generation but as a call for fairness and nuance. Point 2. The trigger, withdrawals and criticism at the Dubai Tennis Championships, both Sabalenka, citing a hip injury, and Swiatek, adjusting her schedule after Doha, withdrew shortly before play. The tournament director suggested that elite players who pull out at the last minute should face harsher penalties, even losing ranking points, arguing that fines weren't enough. Some called the reasons for withdrawals strange, even questioning the validity of Sabalenka's injury. In a sport where rankings dictate entry into major events, where every tournament points bracket matters, this sparked debate, but also frustration. Enter Gauff, who publicly weighed in, suggesting that what some perceive as routine decisions within a grueling tour can't simply be dismissed as excuses. For her, to single out players like Sabalenka and Swiatek with an unjust lens misses the reality of professional tennis, where physical welfare, strategy, and respect for longevity matter as much as the results. Point 3. Why Gauff's voice matters. Gauff's rise from child prodigy to top-tier professional has been remarkable. She's navigated media scrutiny, fierce competition, and heightened expectations with poise. With that experience comes a unique perspective. She understands the grind of the tour, the travel, the training, the injuries that flare up unexpectedly, the decision-making that goes into choosing where to play or rest. So when Gauff speaks out against what she saw as unfair criticism, it's not simply defending peers. It's pushing back against a culture that can sometimes dehumanize top athletes, reducing them to caricatures of commitment or grit, while ignoring the complexities of elite sport. For her generation of players, who've grown up under the spotlight from their teens, this matters. Point 4. The broader narrative, respect, rivalry, and public perception. This isn't the first time these stories have intersected. In the 2025 French Open final, when Gauff defeated Sabalenka to win her first Roland-Garros title, the match and its aftermath sparked a media firestorm. After the victory, Sabalenka made remarks that many interpreted as minimizing Gauff's performance, focusing more on her own errors than Gauff's championship play, and even suggesting that if Swiatek had made the final instead, she might have won. Some critics saw Sabalenka's comments as unsportsmanlike or disrespectful, a sore loser narrative that overlooked the reality that both players endured the same conditions and that Gauff's win was decisive under pressure. Others defended her emotional response as simply human. After losing the biggest match of her year, in windy conditions that heightened anxiety and unforced errors, emotions ran high. Gauff herself addressed those comments at the time, acknowledging the emotional intensity and noting that post-match reactions are rarely calm, measured affairs. She also highlighted that both she and Sabalenka had faced similar conditions and mental strain, urging empathy over judgment. Later, Sabalenka publicly apologized, in written form and privately to Gauff, acknowledging